through there. Marty Marino, please come on up here and take this microphone. We're going to hear about the adventure that Marty took recently. I think it was in May, he told to us about a trip that he was going to be doing. And boy, it's long past time to report. I kept on forgetting about it, and he said, how about a coming weekend? So here we are today, and he's going to tell us all about it. So first of all, Marty, introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, how long you've lived in Vegas, here, what you do, that kind of thing.
I'm Marty Marino with my wife Jeannie and family. We moved from Northeast Ohio about 25 years ago and been members of the church for about 23. We met in FOMs when Pastor Phil got it off the ground, and we've been here ever since. And right now I'm teaching again. I retired for a few years, and they needed special education teachers in the district, so I jumped back in and want to share at the onset that it's been harder teaching than bicycling to Glacier National Park.
Okay, so tell us what this bike trip was about, how it came about, the purpose, and who went with you.
It was originally just a ride that we were going to do this summer. My friend from high school, we've been biking friends and stayed in touch, and he lives south of D.C., and we were going to just pedal the glacier and come back. And the more I thought about it, maybe we needed to do something with some purpose other than recreation and entertainment. So talked to Jeannie and him and a few other people and thought maybe a cancer fundraiser would be a good thing to do, since our lives have been touched in a kind of a negative way with the amount of cancer that we've dealt with in our family and friends.
Okay, and so what organization did you choose to partner with?
Dana-Farber Cancer Research Institute in Boston. They have been in the cancer research business probably for 60 years, and they've done wonderful things. They have some of the world's renowned researchers there. So we partnered up with their annual ride across Massachusetts, and they said that they would help support us through their website if we did something here. So we decided to do it on our part of the country.
So you say raising funds for cancer research. Now you have to pay attention because words make a real difference. There are organizations that raise funds for cancer research, and then there are those that are cancer awareness. Awareness means making people aware of cancer and the surrounding issues. But this is to actually do the research into detecting and treating cancer. So that's the difference. And so you pay attention if you want to donate to something, whichever kind of charity you do. Okay, so you chose that you would do that, and you say just biking to Glacier National Monument. How many miles is this trip you're going to be on?
We thought the whole trip should be about 1,300. It ended up being about 1,200. We got a couple bailout rides along the way.
Okay, so 1,200 miles. So you left toward the end of June, and so here we have a picture of your recumbent bike loaded and desert terrain there going uphill. What was the temperatures that you experienced when you started?
We hit 115 degrees a couple of days, and the road temperature on our bike computer was over 120. So it was a little bit on the hot side. Plus we were pedaling and perspiring and trying to drink enough to stay hydrated, which was really difficult. I'm not sure how people do that when they do things like we were doing, but we couldn't seem to get enough liquids and keep them in us.
Now, you know it's hot in June around here, but you remember that was the week that was unusually hot, 115 every day. Usually it's July when that hits here, but you chose that week, and it didn't get any, it never got that hot through the rest of the summer, so it's just that one time. Now, where is your friend from? You're from the desert, so you know these temperatures. What about your friend?
He's from southern Maryland, and he's used to heat and humidity, but not quite the dry and the intense heat and sun out here, with really no shade along the way. They have a lot of trees there, and it's a little different.
Yeah, it's a little different. Yeah, I like the way you say that. So here's what it's like close to where you start, and here's what it was like where you finished. You see a little bit of a contrast there. And you had to carry everything with you. prepared for the 115 degrees and also be prepared for sleet and rain and cold temperatures. Okay, so let's get back to the beginning again and tell us about each of these pictures.
Just a picture of a weather station on a little bit of a peak that we were pedaling on. My friend likes to get his picture taken, so I obliged.
Looks like he's looking for shade, and there is none.
There's no shade.
Yeah.
These gentlemen were brothers. We met them in Wells, Nevada, and they were more interested in why we were not riding Harleys. And they were just shaking their head most of the time, but they did offer. They were headed to Glacier. They said, where were we headed? And we told them, and they did offer to buy the beer if we get there when they were there. So that gave us something to shoot for.
Now, of course, bikers like this sometimes have bad reputation, but we've shared before when Pastor Diane and I were park pastors in Yellowstone back in the 80s, as we would go through the campgrounds, informing people there that there was going to be a worship service in the amphitheater. The friendliest people in the campground were pretty much always wearing black leather, and they were bikers. And they would invite us into their campsite with beers and things like that, and we'd always, well, we're kind of working here, so we didn't partake either. But yeah, so I like this picture. It brings back some memories also.
Out of Jackpot, the morning we just pedaled over the line into Idaho. Thought that was a good place to take a picture since that was our second state that we were in. A lot of beautiful sunsets along the way, not a lot out there. It's very desolate, but when you're pedaling over many hours into the evening, and sometimes we pedaled into the night, there's a lot of beautiful sunsets, and they change as you go, and it just was pretty awesome to see.
So at that time of year, sunset's pretty late, and you're still on your bike. How many hours a day did you ride your bikes?
Probably the day was like 12 or 13, 14 hours, but the pedaling was probably about 8 to 10 at the most, depending on the terrain and the wind and the weather.
I ride my bike a couple times a week, and I ride it for about 45 minutes. I think I'm doing pretty good.
You are.
You were riding 8 to 10 hours a day every day. And nobody's applauding. Boy, I tell you, everybody is awestruck.
I calculated 500,000 revolutions on the cranks.
Oh,
So,
okay.
for what that's worth.
Well, let's get back to the pictures up here.
This is on a bike trail in Ketchum, Haley, Idaho area. My wife would be proud of me that I actually got on a bike trail and got off the highway. The highway was just jammed. I never saw so many cars. It was like there was an accident, but it was such congestion. So we actually made better time on this bike trail than the people in the automobiles were doing. So I thought I better do this for us and for my wife to show her that I could do that. This gentleman was jogging along the bike trail and sweating. His name was Juan, and he had limited English, and I have very little Spanish, but it looked like he needed water, so my water was like 100 degrees, but I said, you know, we can share this with you. And he held it up and drank about a third, gave it back and pointed to a fountain, and he said, "Cold agua." Anyway, he ended up inviting us to dinner. He had such a gentle spirit and, you know, big heart. He just kind of was concerned about us. He said he would drive us to his sister's in the next town, which was going the other way, and she would cook us a good Mexican dinner. And boy, I was tempted. My wife knows how much I love good food, and I thought, doggone it, I wish we were going the other way. But we had to decline. But he was gracious. Nice gentleman. This is my riding partner, Jim. We're getting into the Sawtooth, into the mountains, into the climbs, the peaks and that, so we thought we'd take a break there for a picture.
And there's a lot of signs that are posted there. Here's one of them.
Jim questioned me on this. He said, why didn't you tell me there were bears in this country? And I said, I thought I did. Apparently, I must have been one of those things I neglected.
I like that first rule up there. Don't surprise bears. Kind of like, boom. Don't do that. So, yeah.
This is our first summit. About an hour before we reached this summit, we were lying on the side of the road because we thought we couldn't go on. Lady came by in the car. She slowed down, hollering, "You're almost there, you're almost there." And I go, yay, and I go to my buddy, let's go. And about an hour later, we reached that. But I started thinking, are we almost there by car, or are we almost there by bicycle? I wish he wouldn't have done that.
Okay, so who took this picture?
Family stopped and they asked us what we were doing, and we shared the ride and the cancer fundraiser, and then they shared about family members struggling with cancer, and asked could they take a picture, and we said sure, and really nice people, and took a picture of them too, but I didn't put it up.
So did they ask you, hey, what are you doing? Or what are you doing?
How'd you get up here?
Yeah, that's right. Fully loaded bikes going uphill, going about how fast?
Usually 3 miles an hour.
3 miles an hour, okay.
On these climbs.
Yeah, that's pretty, a lot of work going up those.
Some of the beautiful scenery in the Sawtooths, you could have taken 1,000 pictures. They would have all turned out beautifully, but decided to share a few. Wondering where was the school and where are the kids? They're somewhere. I couldn't find them, so it was, I thought, a good spot for a picture. This was a Native American family. July 4th, we stayed on the Salmon River. They came up to fish for salmon. They're allowed to fish pretty much any time of the year they like. And the kids in the family kind of adopted us and just had a great time with them. They'd show up and we'd visit, and then they'd invite us over for s'mores and fireworks, and just really a nice time, nice connection with a different group of people.
So that's 4th of July, and it's no surprise on 4th of July I was up in Moapa at the sitting for the fireworks display up there, and I was sitting right next to several of the people from the council of the Moapa tribe. And this one man, he was just laughing and carrying on and telling jokes and having a fun time. And we were talking with him, asking about the Moapa tribe. And at one point he asked me, well, where were you born? And I said, Tucson, Arizona. And so he just kind of grinned and looked at me and said, so, you're Native American too? Makes you think.
On our way to Missoula, the bicycle capital of the world, adventure cycling, and everybody kind of gravitates to Missoula on their bicycles. They have a college there, but people travel from all over the world and eventually come through Missoula. Bear country still, Galena Summit, welcome to Montana. So we were going to stay at the top and camp, but decided to head down the other side, and got into camp at night, had a flat tire in the middle of the descent, and it was an interesting evening. Got to bed about 1 o'clock that morning. On our way to Glacier, and we were going to Gail and Judy, a member of Christ the Servant, who were going to put us up for a couple days, so we bypassed the entrance and just took the highway to East Glacier. Time for a break.
So that's what your recumbent looks like, fully loaded. That's a lot to be pedaling that far.
This is what you look like at Gail and Judy's fifth wheel when you've pedaled for 20 days without a real full day off. So this is my buddy Jim. They had all kind of things planned for us, and we just wanted to sleep in. And we ended up taking a nap that day. So it was just really nice. They were real gracious, fed us, and kept us in good spirits.
So the way that worked out is back in May when he was explaining this trip to each worship service, saying we're going to Glacier National Park. Gail, who worships at 8 o'clock, sitting right here, said, "Oh, you can stay with me when you get there." And it was like, wow, what a wonderful encounter that here you're going that far away up to the Canadian border, essentially, and there's some folks from Christ's Servant that are going to post you. And so this is a picture of that. So we're glad that that connection was made.
And just one of the lakes in Glacier. We have a bunch of pictures, but thought this might be a nice one. The storm rolling in before the second shot, when we got caught in the storm, the hail and sleet and snow. It took about 12 minutes for that storm to develop. We saw the clouds, didn't think much of it, and pretty soon we were reaching for all our rain gear, and it just kind of let loose on us.
So from pedaling in the Mojave Desert to pedaling in the clouds, actually, that's quite a distance. So tell us about the bears that joined you on this trip.
Well, there was a grizzly that right before this picture, about half hour, crossed the road, and we were all excited, and we looked and kind of took not a close look, but we could see she had a cub on the side of the road. So we thought, if we have to pedal past her and the cub, maybe it wouldn't be a good idea. So we didn't really know what to do. A big group of Harley Davidson bikers came up, and they said they saw the bear as they were coming up, and asked how we were going to get by. Like, we told them they had a cub, and so that she had a cub, so they gave us an escort. It was kind of interesting. Kind of revved up their engines, and we were like feeling really cool pedaling with this group. So we were protected.
I would imagine that riding your bikes at 3 miles an hour past the bear, you'd look pretty tasty. So it's a good thing those bikers came by for you. So.
The last shot for the talk here, we saw this and thought a throwback to the '60s, but with a lot of meaning in however you want to take it, and thought I'd include that in the pictures.
Okay, so how much money did you raise for the cancer research overall?
$5,500, and a lot of it thanking all of you who contributed and who maybe didn't contribute financially, but who also were supporting us spiritually. And we had friends that contributed, and people along the way would reach into their pocket and give us money. We met a biker couple, and she said to her husband, we need to give them some money for this trip. He said, "That's my beer money." And she looked at him and said, "Then you need to give twice as much." So she said, "Dig in that wallet and get some money out for them." So it was just things like that would happen. We were like, okay, this is good.
But you weren't soliciting funds along the way.
No, we weren't. They would just offer free will offerings.
Okay. And so 100% of that goes because you paid all your own expenses on this trip and made it that way. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask Marty about this trip? Yes, right here.
Just
how many
one.
flat tires?
Just one, and it came from the inside of the rim. Pardon?
You fixed it just where you were, right?
Yeah, it was about 10 at night, and we had our lights out and on the side of the road working on it. We got it going and kept going.
Yeah, when you're on a bicycle and you get a flat, you fix it yourself. So you got to have all those tools. Over here. Yeah, right here.
Pardon?
Where'd you get the bike from?
Bought it from a guy in Cleveland, my bike. Yeah. And my friends were coming out visiting our friends, and they brought it out with them. They went up and picked it up. And
yeah, you don't see those kind of bicycles very often, so it is hard to get those sometimes. Okay, another question there.
How does the recumbent bike work going up those hills?
very difficult. Down the hills, I was always ahead. Going up the hills, it was like I'd lose sight of my buddy. I just like, wow.
Because your bike weighs more, for one thing, weighs more than his bike, so the uphill's really hard.
All
Okay.
legs.
We had another question right back there, yeah. Yeah. Why did you decide to use a recumbent bike?
I've got a short wheelbase, and this one's a long wheelbase, and this one's more comfortable for that type of riding that we were doing. Not as quick and fast, but like more of a Cadillac than a sports car kind of thing.
Okay, when you're riding an upright bike, for 1,200 miles, you're sitting on a seat this big. When you're riding his recumbent, you're on one of these chairs. That's the difference. It's wide, supportive, has a back. So, yeah. Okay, we have another question. How many gears?
I set it up for 36. I geared it down quite a bit. It's about as low as you could gear a bike. So it was a lot of spinning to go a little bit, but it was a lot better for the climbs that we had. And once you get going downhill, then you kind of can gear yourself out because you pick up so much speed.
What are they made of? Titanium or what is it?
No, just chromoly, just standard good steel.
Okay, yes, right here.
Oh yeah, you can still, I think they told us we can accept all year.
Okay,
So that was interesting.
over here. Where did you spend the nights?
Side of the road or the campground? In a campground, a couple times motels. Yeah, we brought our tents, cooking gear, freeze-dried food, or we'd buy something at a grocery store.
Yeah.
How much would you estimate all of that extra stuff weighed?
I think the bike total probably 75 pounds, maybe, right, 75 or 80. Yeah, it was hard to pick up, difficult.
Okay, it's in the back.
I didn't hear anything about your return trip.
Okay, how did you get back home?
We pedaled up through the backside of Glacier, ended up in Missoula, and Jeannie, my wife, flew up, and we spent a few days, and then we rented a one-way rental car and tore the bike apart and loaded it up and drove back in one day.
And that was the downhill part. I looked on a map and it's all downhill.
Wow. I see. Anyway, it was like hard for me to put those two together, coming up and going back.
How did you condition yourself for the trip?
How did you prepare? Get in shape.
Riding about a month before with a lot of weight. My downfall was that I would ride early in the morning, but when it got warm, hot, I'd come home. So I kind of cheated and paid for it a little bit later.
Any more questions?
I'd like to share one thing about like a turning point for me on the trip was when I met a young lady and her husband, maybe in their late 30s, and they were on a bucket list at doing things that they wanted to do because she had brain cancer, and she had an operation, and they gave her 3 months to 6 months to live. But then they also hooked her up with a research doctor in Israel who had an innovative program. She wore a 22-pound battery pack computer that was wired to her brain, different, about 22 electrodes, 20 electrodes, and it was monitoring activity in her brain. They could not get all the tumor out, but the idea was to keep that tumor from growing any larger, and then she would have longevity. But it was an experiment, and the FDA approved it as an experimental program. And she said, regardless of what it does for me, maybe it'll help somebody else. I was like, wow. I was like, man, that kind of got to me. I thought, there must be a reason that we all reach out and help where we can, because we never know who it'll end up helping.
Okay, thank you very much, Marty.